Hey everyone, and welcome back to Stoic Arena. Today, we're diving deep into the life of one of history's most eccentric, controversial, and downright wild philosophers. Forget the image of a serene sage meditating under an olive tree. The man we're talking about lived in a barrel, told Alexander the Great to get out of his sunlight, and believed the key to happiness was living like a dog. This is the story of Diogenes the Cynic, the man who took philosophy to the streets and turned it into performance art. So, who was this guy? Diogenes was born in Sinope, a Greek colony on the Black Sea, around 412 BC. His early life is a bit murky, but the story goes that his father was a banker, and they both got into some serious trouble for debasing the currency, basically, tampering with coins. Whether this is true or just a metaphor for his later philosophical mission to deface the currency of conventional values, we don't know for sure. But what we do know is that Diogenes was exiled from his home, stripped of his citizenship, his possessions, and his reputation. For most people, this would be a devastating blow. For Diogenes, it was the beginning of his true calling. He made his way to Athens, the bustling heart of the ancient world. But instead of trying to rebuild his life in a conventional way, he did something completely radical. He embraced his poverty and homelessness. He saw the Athenians chasing wealth, fame, and power, and he thought they were all completely insane, trapped in a prison of their own making. So, he decided to show them another way. He rejected all social conventions, all material possessions beyond the absolute bare minimum, a cloak, a staff, and a small pouch for food. He famously took up residence not in a house, but in a large ceramic jar, or a pithos, in the middle of the marketplace. This wasn't just about being poor, it was a deliberate, public statement. He was challenging everything the people of Athens held dear. His philosophy, which became known as Cynicism, was all about living in accordance with nature and rejecting the artificial desires that society imposes on us. The word cynic comes from the Greek word for dog-like, and Diogenes took this to heart. He observed that dogs live in the present, they're shameless, they do what they need to do without worrying about what others think. So, Diogenes decided to live like a dog. He would eat, sleep, and even relieve himself in public, not to be gross, but to prove a point, that many of our rules about shame and propriety are completely arbitrary and unnatural. He was a living, breathing critique of civilization. This made for some of the most legendary stories in all of philosophy. He would walk through the marketplace in broad daylight, holding a lit lantern. When people asked him what he was doing, he'd reply, "I'm just looking for an honest man." The implication, of course, was that he couldn't find one among the supposedly respectable citizens of Athens. He would disrupt lectures by famous philosophers like Plato, at one point bringing a plucked chicken into Plato's academy to mock his definition of a human as a featherless biped. Plato, not to be outdone, simply added with broad, flat nails to his definition. But perhaps the most famous story of all involves Alexander the Great. Imagine the scene. Alexander, the most powerful man in the known world, conqueror of empires, hears about this strange philosopher and decides to visit him. He finds Diogenes sunbathing next to his barrel. Alexander, surrounded by his entourage of soldiers and courtiers, stands over Diogenes and, impressed by his simple life, offers to grant him any wish, anything he wants, it's his. What does Diogenes say? He doesn't ask for money or power or a palace. He simply looks up at the mighty ruler and says, "Stand out of my light." The audacity is just breathtaking. Alexander's followers were shocked, ready to punish this insolent beggar, but Alexander was stunned. He was so impressed by Diogenes's complete independence and lack of desire for anything Alexander could offer. He reportedly turned to his men and said, "Truly, if I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes." This single encounter perfectly captures the core of Diogenes' philosophy. True wealth isn't about what you have, it's about what you don't need. True power is being the master of yourself, not the master of others. Diogenes wasn't a Stoic, but the Stoics who came later, like Zeno of Citium, were heavily influenced by him. They saw in his radical self-sufficiency and his indifference to external things what the Stoics would call indifference, a powerful model for living a virtuous life. While the Stoics were a bit more, let's say, socially acceptable, they admired Diogenes' courage and his commitment to living his principles, no matter how extreme. He practiced what he preached in the most literal way possible. He showed that you could be happy, virtuous, and free, even with nothing. His goal wasn't just to be a troublemaker. His public stunts were a form of shock therapy for the soul. He wanted to wake people up from their unthinking conformity. By behaving like a dog, he was holding up a mirror to society and asking, "Are your customs and values really natural and good, or are they just habits you've never questioned?" He forced people to confront uncomfortable truths about their own lives, their anxieties about money, their fear of public opinion, their endless chase for things that don't bring lasting happiness. He believed that virtue was the only good, and that it was enough for happiness. Everything else, health, wealth, reputation, even life itself, was indifferent. This is a tough pill to swallow, but it's also incredibly liberating. If you don't need anything from the outside world to be happy, then nothing and no one can control you. You become truly free. You become a king in your own right, just as Diogenes was a king in his ceramic jar. Diogenes lived a long life, eventually ending up in Corinth, where he continued his unconventional lifestyle until his death, reportedly at the age of 90. The stories of his death are just as varied and strange as the stories of his life. Some say he died from an infected dog bite, others that he held his breath until he expired. And my personal favorite is that he died from eating a raw octopus. We'll probably never know the truth, but it doesn't really matter. His life was his message. So, what can we, here in the 21st century, learn from this ancient provocateur? We might not want to live in a barrel or eat in the street, but Diogenes' core message is more relevant than ever. We live in a world that constantly tells us we need more followers, more gadgets, more money, more validation. Diogenes challenges us to ask, why? What do we truly need to be happy? He encourages us to practice a kind of voluntary simplicity, to question our desires, and to find freedom not in acquiring more, but in needing less. He teaches us the power of self-sufficiency, of being comfortable in our own skin, and of having the courage to live authentically, even if it means standing out from the crowd. Diogenes the Cynic was more than just a crazy philosopher. He was a master of freedom, a pioneer of mindfulness, and a spiritual warrior who fought his battles in the public square. His life is a powerful, if extreme, reminder that the greatest empire we can ever rule is the one within ourselves. Thanks for joining me on the Stoic Arena today to explore the life of this absolute legend. What do you think of Diogenes? Inspiring hero or just a public nuisance? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey into the wild side of philosophy, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive. See you in the next one.